The current business model of the UFC is going to inevitably lead to its downfall, its failure, because the UFC is proving that they don't really care about the fans anymore, but they care about what is the easiest way to make money, the easiest fights to make, even if they're clearly not the best fights to make, even if clearly other people are deserving of a title shot. I mean, just look at Dana White announcing two of probably the most unnecessary fights since, I mean, we're talking Cyril Gane, Derek Lewis type. I mean, we're going into that territory. We're going into just some of the most useless matches, BMF territory, honestly. Like maybe even worse than BMF. I could get over Paddy versus Gaethje, but I cannot get over Volkanovski versus Lopes. I mean, this is actually a joke. But like I have been literally saying on the channel for months, I've been talking about this time and time again. This goes with the current UFC business model, which is making the easiest fights. I mean, look at the Apex cards. But it's gotten to the point where now it's bled into pay-per-views, where now the UFC is making deals with, for example, Sydney, Australia, right? And they're saying, we're going to come to you guys X amount of times in the next few years, even if it doesn't make sense, to the point that now Volkanovski has been sitting out for 10 months. I mean, Volkanovski has been asking to fight for a very long time at this point. He could have fought a long time ago, but they're waiting for him to save him for this Sydney card because, of course, that is the fight that makes sense. The UFC business model right now heavily relies on those site fees. I mean, there was a TKO meeting, I believe, last year. They said that this was going to be their business model, getting paid to go to these, arenas, kind of being, kind of a circus in a way, like just going town to town, getting paid money. And because of that, you're so focused on, okay, we have X amount of pay-per-views. Who cares what's the main event? We're going to get paid the same site fee anyway, so might as well put anything on, because the site fee alone will make them even, will make them a profit, because that is how much the UFC is getting paid, because they keep breaking records by, once again, overpricing fans. And I think this whole business model, by now not delivering the fights that we want, and just overall, I mean, pricing fans out, like I just said, making the easiest fights, not the best fights, inevitably fans are going to leave. And we're already seeing fans leave. We're already seeing fans get annoyed. And Dana White, in my opinion, I've said this time and time again, I know people say, oh, Dana White's the worst, this and that. Dana White is doing a terrible job right now, but do not get it twisted. He is the only person that could save the UFC. I've said this time and time again. People say, oh, what am I talking about? It's because, guys, this is the sad truth of the UFC. It's happened to all big businesses, right? Look at Disney, which, kind of owns UFC right now for the next month. But other companies, right? Anytime they just abuse a franchise, they milk it dry until they're just, they don't even look like what they did in their prime. I mean, look at any big franchise, any movie franchise, that is what's happened. And I think the UFC, if they're going down this route, I hope it doesn't keep going down this route. But if it does, it will lead to failure, because I'm telling you guys, Dana White is the only person that could save the company, because whoever else is going to be in charge, Dana White steps down tomorrow. Try finding a guy who is not going to be absolutely brainwashed by the amount of money he can make just by milking the UFC, just by putting on whatever event, the easiest fight. Who cares? I don't even got to think about this. This is just, matchmakers. Who needs that? We'll just put together any fight. The UFC, what they did so well was build these contenders early. So when they got to the main stage, there was hype around it. And we're not seeing that anymore. And we're seeing less and less superstars. And it's going to get to the point where we're going to have zero superstars. And then who the hell's watching when the core fans are leaving, the casuals aren't coming in? I mean, there's nothing that the UFC can do at this point. And I mean, I think that these two big fight announcements, which we didn't even talk about these fights really, and just go into how ridiculous they are. I mean, I think this really does show where the UFC is going. So I hope that Dana White, the only thing I think I hope for the UFC is that Dana White gets, a second win. Maybe, I made a joke last week, literally in a video, that literally I hope like Dana White, the boxing thing fails, power stop fails, maybe gets a divorce, something like that, like terrible things that he's like, you know what? I got to go back into the lab and I got to really grind to make UFC the biggest sport in the world. And maybe he gets a second win to motivation there. Dana White announced a lot of fights, but there's two fights really that just apply to what I'm talking about. And I mean, firstly, let's just start off with Paddy Pimblett and Justin Gaethje, a fight. It's weird, okay? And first of all, it was announced earlier in the week, or not announced, it was reported by Ariel Helwani and kind of speculated that it seemed like that, Nunes versus Harrison was most likely going to be the first pay-per-view main event of next year. And what I said was I was disappointed because the CBS card, this is their first card on CBS. This could be a big opportunity for them. I think it should be a really, really stellar card, which I actually have to say they really did put together a really good card. And let's not like lose that that in the fact that, yeah, the UFC is making terrible decisions, but this is really a good card. But I think because the UFC might have saw some of the fan backlash, they were like, all right, maybe let's add, another title fight. Let's make an interim title fight. And look, I'm going to be honest, guys. I really do like the Justin Gaethje Paddy Pimblett fight. Undeniably, this is, a stupid interim title. This should not be an interim title. It should really just be the co-main event, 5 rounds, no interim title, and then see what happens after that. Arman Tsarukyan just had a good performance. I mean, what if he's basically going to be out for a year? I get Arman Tsarukyan might have blown his title shot a year ago. If he missed weight, now if he seriously was injured, I think then this is all foul. But if he did miss weight, okay, fine. Then you know what? I understand the UFC not putting him first, but I want to see Arman against Ilya. Honestly, there was getting some hype around there. I mean, there was a back and forth. I was going to do a video on their back and forth in the hallway and talk about the matchup at one point, but now it just seems like, I mean, Arman is not even going to get a title shot. And by the way, a lot of people have been pointing this out on Twitter. Max Holloway. I mean, Max Holloway literally beat Justin Gaethje and is coming off of a win to Dustin Poirier, and he's not in this interim title. I mean, where is he at? It really would make more sense Arman versus Max Holloway. But once again, that is not the biggest fight. And I gotta be honest, guys, if it was just this, I would be okay with it. Like, it is really crazy, but it would be pretty similar to Cyril Gane versus Derek Lewis, where it's like they need a big main event, or not a big main event, but well, in this case, a big main event. But in the Derek Lewis one, they just needed at least a main event, but they just needed something on the card here that they just wanted to put together. Even if it didn't make sense, it's a big enough fight that people are going to, draw interest into it and be excited about it. So I understand that. Fine. But what I do not understand is when you're going to give now just random fights for fights that fans don't even want to see at this point, when you could make other fights that are better. And I'm talking about now more specifically Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes too. I could not, my brain could not wrap around it when I was seeing this. What are you talking about? Why would you do this? This makes absolutely no sense. Lone Murphy is coming off of a really good knockout win that happened a couple months ago. Don't know why you just have him go up against Volkanovski. He's undefeated. The fight sells itself. Volkanovski against an undefeated guy. We do not want to see Diego Lopes. I am so confused. Now, I do think, and I do wonder, and there's also Movsar Evloev, by the way, which we could talk about him, and he's in a whole Twitter drama right now with Lerone Murphy right now, but we could talk about Movsar Evloev, but I mean, I personally think, I understand that the company has problems with Movsar for whatever reason, that they think he's a boring fighter. I think why not just have him fight the guys on a really long win streak? But honestly, pick Lerone Murphy. But I do not understand the thinking process of picking this random rematch that we do not need. Diego Lopes already lost to Volkanovski pretty convincingly. It wasn't even like a close fight or anything like that. Now, I also want to say a theory that I have, and the only thing that makes maybe all of this make sense to me, and I do kind of want to, reach out and see what I get back and kind of maybe come back on Monday and see whatever, or not Monday, or I forgot it's the weekend. I'm all fucked up because of Thanksgiving, but I'm curious to see, did Lerone Murphy or Movsar Evloev deny a fight at any point? Is that why the UFC is kind of holding this against them? Because I don't really think that the fans are clamoring to see Diego Lopes versus Alexander Volkanovski too. Like, I'm sorry. I would have much rather see Lerone Murphy. That is a much more interesting fight. And Movsar Evloev I would rather see. Those are both new fights, fresh fights. And that was something I think I talked about when Volkanovski won. I said, hey, I'm kind of excited because there are all these, kind of fresh matchups, these guys coming up that Volkanovski didn't even fight. But we're literally just seeing recycled again Diego Lopes. Like, what is this? Like, this is the most stupid thing. And then what if Diego Lopes beats Volkanovski? We're going to have Diego Lopes versus Volkanovski 3. I do not want to see that. Like, this is terrible. Why would they do this? I don't know what the thinking was. And the facts are this. I mean, according to both Lerone Murphy and Movsar Evloev, it seems like they're both ready. I mean, Movsar called out Lerone and said, hey, let's fight on that same card, which, yeah, I think is a great idea. I think they should fight each other. They shouldn't fight each other. One of them should be fighting for the title, and then Diego Lopes should be fighting the other one. That is the clear decision. Like, why would they do this? I can't believe this. I mean, Lerone Murphy, his last knockout was insane. Like, you can't even just say, like, oh, he's boring. Like, he's coming off of the most insane knockout of his career and probably is going to be the most insane knockout of his career. And another baffling thing about this is even if they were thinking, oh, Lerone Murphy, they don't want him as champion, or Movsar Evloev, they don't want him as champion. Well, Volkanovski has a pretty good chance of beating both of those guys. Like, he would probably be a favorite in the betting odds. Like, I would probably assume because, I think us fans have pretty much said like Volkanovski is a favor at least in both of those. I mean, obviously anything can happen if Volkanovski is getting older, but I would probably pick Volkanovski. So it's not even like this is someone that would just destroy Volkanovski. You're trying to protect him. Like it is insane the decisions that they're making. I said this when the UFC refused to make Islam versus Ilya. If Ilya had moved up and lost to Islam Makhachev, then you only have one champ. Now you got both Ilya and Islam, two separate weight classes, and you can, take turns headlining them because they need 13 spots. That is also why the UFC are saying, hey, if you're going to move up in weight, you have to vacate because they want as many, headlining events. They need those title fights. They cannot afford a champ to hog up 2 belts for divisions to be held up. That is why I think they're focusing on, look, who's ready at this date? I mean, look, I understand it happens every few times, and it used to happen maybe once a year, you know what I'm saying? And it's like it's progressively increased over the past few years where it's like, okay, now it's a few times a year. Now it feels like all the time. And it feels like this is now the norm is like who's available. It's never like, okay, we have a good fight. Let's hold it back. Let's get ready. I mean, and why I think this is going to be extremely detrimental to the UFC is there's no planning involved. And it's going to get to a point where you're going to have all of these guys that nobody gives a shit about in probably 5 years or so. That's probably what's going to happen. All the guys that people give a shit about will be gone. And it'll be all these people that are not promoted well. It's only like the same thing that we're seeing on Dana White's Contender Series, the same dumb story. And it's like, we'll see. I mean, the heavyweight division's getting worse. I don't know, guys. I mean, I think that my hope here is, in all honesty, I do not think it's all, doom and gloom for the UFC. I do believe, maybe I'm being optimistic here, I think the UFC will suffer, and I think that Dana White will see this, and I think Dana White's like, all right, I got to lock in, and I think he'll lock in, and I think we'll get a pretty good year. Hopefully that is 2026. It feels like that this is the most heat that the UFC has gotten in a while, so I'm curious to see where this is going to lead. If Dana White, I don't think he'll change anything, but we'll see what the rest of the year looks like, and who knows, maybe I'll be saying, wow, 2026 was the best year for MMA. I don't know. Like I said, I could forgive Paddy Pimblett versus Justin Gaethje. I get it. You need a fun fight, whatever. Do not get Volkanovski versus Diego Lopes too. Nobody wants to see that fight. But there also was some other fights that now Amanda Nunes versus Kayla Harrison. I mean, we talked about it kind of earlier in the week. I don't mind the fight. I think it's a good fight. And at this point, like I said, I think it should have been the main event and then co-main 5 rounds, Justin Gaethje, Paddy Pimblett. So you weren't married to the idea that this guy has to fight Ilya. But I don't know. I mean, I liked the Paddy fight, and I just wish maybe Paddy would have fought earlier if this was going to be the case. But obviously, I mean, there's so much MMA news I can't even get into because Ilya also came out, said that he, is in some sort of seemingly legal situation. He didn't confirm it, but seemed like, he's maybe having a custody battle for his kid, maybe going to be out of it. Don't tell John Anik about it. Also, Sean O'Malley's making his return against Song Yadong, and that's a dangerous fight. Song Yadong hits really, really hard. I could see him knocking out Sean O'Malley, but I don't know yet. I will make a prediction when I get close to it. Waldo Cortez Acosta is also going to fight Derek Lewis. I like that fight. Arnold Allen versus Gene Silva. I'm curious to see how the UFC is going to evolve, how they're going to move on, and hopefully Dana White, I hope he just leaves this boxing. I really think that this boxing thing has been maybe the worst thing to happen to the UFC, just because he's been shifting his attention away. And it's like, I think he's stretching himself too thin. I think that the boxing thing will probably wind up failing at this rate, and the UFC. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Check out my last video where I talked about John Jones wrestling with Hamzat. Hamzat kind of, mocking him in a way. You guys are the best fan base in MMA. Hit the subscribe button, like, comment, and share, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.